He's a comic actor, a master impressionist, star of numerous classic comedy films, not to mention an early 80s cast member of Saturday Night Live when it was really Saturday Night Live. He's also author of a new memoir, packed with behind-the-scenes stories about his incredible life in showbiz and beyond. Average Joe, the Memoirs of a Blue-Collar Entertainer. Please welcome my pal, the vice chairman of the board, Mr. Joe Piscopo. Joe, thank you for being here. I'm delighted. Tell us how you got into this business, Joe, and who your first inspirations are. I thought it would be Sid Caesar or Milton Berle or somebody, but it wasn't.
Yeah, very close. And Raymond, honored to be with you always. Sure. Really always an honor to be with you, dear friend. And thanks for reading the book. I appreciate that very much. But you know, the funny thing is, when I was a kid in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and we'd be watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and I just could distinctly remember, third grade maybe I was, and there was a guy, and this is really esoteric, so stay with me if you would. There was a guy named Guy Marks, and he was a comedian out of Philadelphia. And he would do like bits, and also a guy named Frank Gorshin. These guys would do bits. They would set stages and say, what happens if this guy, if Humphrey Bogart, walks into a bar? I was mesmerized by that. Not Jerry Lewis was always my icon, and you doing the greatest Jerry Lewis interview ever. You know, that's show business legend. We all know that. So Jerry was like a hero to me, watching The Nutty Professor back then. Yeah. But these guys and Ed Sullivan doing characterizations, that caught my eye. Not the Alan Kings, not the Milton Berles, not the stand-ups, the guys that would just do characterization. Isn't that funny? I got sucked right into that.
Yeah, and they were kind of impressed. I mean, Frank Gorshin was a renowned impressionist. Of course, people know him from the Riddler on the old Batman show, but he was much more than that if you've ever seen his act, you know. But you say you weren't a comic, Joe Piscopo, but why were you in comedy clubs?
Yeah. Well, just to get a platform to become a working actor. So when I went and I got out of college, and my father, God bless him, rest his soul, was an attorney, and I knew I should have gone to law school. He could have probably got me into law school, and I would have been with him in Jersey representing, you know, the blue-collar workers like Pop did. And I said, let me try the comedy thing, because, Ray, I didn't want to, like, get to an age and say, geez, I wonder what would have happened if I ever did that. So I said, I got to go to the comedy clubs. Let me get on stage. They could see me, and then all I wanted to be is what I am now, just a working actor. Are you working? It's about working. It's about the journey. Never wanted to be a star. Never wanted to be a stand-up comic. So I went. I put like 5 minutes together. Went to the improvisation. 1976, when New York was really rough. You think it's bad now? It was really rough back then. And the story goes, as I said in the book, it was true. I said, let me try audition night, Sunday nights. And I went in, and I went through the Lincoln Tunnel and went around 8th Avenue, came down 9th Avenue, 44th and 9th, the legendary improvisation comedy club. Audition night, there must have been 300, maybe 400 people waiting to get into audition.
400?
And I looked at it. It had to be hundreds of people lined down 9th Avenue, right? And I looked at that line, and I kept going, went right back in the Lincoln Tunnel, and I went back home and chickened out completely, you know?
Tell me how Ann Mira and Jerry Stiller mentored you. You mentioned that in the book.
Oh, the best! I just saw Ben Stiller, and I just told him how Ann and Jerry were such a big influence on me. So after a while, when I went back, we would have to get there at noon to audition, and then at 8 o'clock, Judy, I remember everybody, Judy would come out, she'd hand the numbers out, and we'd get on stage. So you do audition, and after a while, and then Chris Albrecht, as you read in the book, was the guy that made me a regular at the Improv. Meant you had to hang out in the dark, dingy bar till 2:30 in the morning and play before like 4 drunk people. That was a regular, you know. But who was in the bar? It was Stiller and Mira. It was Ann and Jerry, and they were there, and they could not have been nicer. They were just so kind to me, and they said, look, you gotta work. And then they said to me, and they said, you gotta do the commercials. I said, I could do commercials? Yes, somebody will come in, they'll see you on stage, you'll be able to do commercials, make money, and that's the money. So if you make money doing commercials, you can really do what you want to do in your career. And they were really influential, could not have been nicer. And we were scared. We were all scared back then.
Yeah, of course.
And Ann Amira particularly was so nice. They were sweetheart. They gave me best advice. You want to do commercials, you'll make money, so you could go like this. You remember this, the Italian thing?
Yeah.
You could do, do what you want.
Yeah, well, and Larry David was also a comic at the same time and a writer. Was he on SNL when you were there?
Yeah, he was for a minute. And he was like, let me tell you, back in the late 70s, at the comedy scene, and thank you for bringing it up, Ray, the comedy scene, it was like when comedy became rock and roll.
Right.
It just caught on. I don't know if it was Freddie Prinze Sr., whether it was Rodney, whether it was Robin Williams, it was Robert Klein, whatever it was a perfect mix of, oh my gosh, comedy is hot. Everybody had to do comedy. And so that's when I went in there, and there was Larry David. Larry David was there. And Larry had been there a couple of years prior to when I went in.
Yeah.
So now Larry he would go on stage and he would get into like fights with the audience. Right. He would get into it back. What you see on Curb Your Enthusiasm, that's Larry, man. Yeah. And we would all gather by the little hallway that led to the showroom, from the bar to the showroom. Hey, yeah. Larry's on. And you go, and Larry, back and forth with the people, fighting with the people. And it was, you know what though? It was comic genius. You could see it was comic genius, But I've never seen him do a full set because he would always leave in a huff. It was so great to watch back then,
He'd leave in a huff. Yeah, look, we have mutual friends, and he continues that routine today, Joe. But look, tell me, leaves in a huff. Tell me what you learned when I read in the book about Rodney Dangerfield. He was the first comic I ever saw live. I was 11 years old, and I begged my mother to buy tickets to 2 of his shows back-to-back in New Orleans. And I sat in the front row. He insulted me for half of it. It was fantastic. What did you learn from Rodney Dangerfield?
Well, Rodney was a sweetheart, and he would come in, and I was the MC at that point.
Right.
And so I'd be on the stage at the Improv, and you could see the shadow of Rodney in the back light, in the back room. And I'll never forget this. And Rodney, I'll tell you, a sweetheart, great guy, and blew that room out like nobody else. Rodney killed it. Pryor came into that room. All the greats came into that room. Nobody blew that room out. The improvisation, 44th and 9th, Hell's Kitchen in New York, late 70s, like Rodney.
Joe, I can't thank you enough for being here. And the book, Average Joe, The Memoirs of a Blue-Collar Entertainer by Joe Piscopo is available at bookstores everywhere. Thank you, my friend. We'll talk soon, and you all can stay tuned for the next part of this interview next week. Thank you.